Hi guys, welcome back to our video Devo series on the names of God. This week we're going to be talking about Jesus being a friend of sinners. And the funny thing is about that it's not a compliment when it's said to him. It's often used as a complaint and meant to cast him in a bad light because of the people he was hanging around with. The religious elite and the powers that be didn't like Jesus and what he was teaching and what he stood for, because it put a lot of heat on them, and so they would cast him in a bad light because of the crowd that was following him around. And it was a pretty shady group that he was hanging out with and eating with, and who were following him around with his teaching. So they tried to loop him in with them and make him discredited in his teaching because of moral incorruptness. But as we learned last time, Jesus, being the Son of God, has an incorruptible character, and that can't be taken away from him. So he is true, he is solid, he is the Son of God, but because of the people he surrounded himself with, or that surrounded him, they were trying to throw him off the rails. The one thing I want to remind us of is that we don't want to throw the Pharisees or the religious powers under the bus quite yet, because I'm sure most of us have experienced a time where we want to throw somebody out just because of the people that they hang around with, that will think somebody's bad news just because of the crew that they're hanging out with. And so let's keep that in perspective as we move forward, that the Pharisees, as much as they are bad, they're not all bad, and I can often relate, so don't throw them under the bus quite yet. But Jesus being a friend of sinners is really good news for you and me, because we are the sinners. He's the friend and we're the sinners. That whether or not you subscribe to Christianity or believe in the Bible or have a faith in God, whatever you want to say, if this is a measuring stick, every single one of us falls short. Romans 3 says that for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, which sucks. But the good thing is that Jesus came, that he didn't just come and pay the bill for us so we could have a relationship with God, but he longs to have a relationship with us and wants to be called a friend of sinners. So this is something that people would mutter when Jesus was teaching. A couple of times it says they were muttering under the breath that this man sits with sinners and tax collectors and eats with them. So his disciples were being asked by the religious elite why he was doing that, and this is how Jesus responds. And Luke 5, he says, Jesus answered them, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I have not come to call those who believe they are righteous, but those who know they are sinners to repentance." So Jesus says, if you guys think you've got it all together, you're probably not going to listen. But those who need a doctor, they're going to listen. So these people people would say, you know what, they're the sick, they're the people who need to be saved. I'm not one of those people. Jesus says, you know, it's going to be hard for me to reach you because you're not open to what I have for you. So depending on where you fall in that could be really good news, or that could be some pretty tough news coming from Jesus, who's the Son of God, that if you think you're righteous, it's going to be hard for you to take this. But if you know you're a sinner, this is good news. So keep that in mind. Luke 15, later on in that same book, it says that now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathered around to hear Jesus, but the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." So there's a group of these shady characters gathering around to hear Jesus speak, and then the religious elite, who were there just to keep tabs on Jesus, were sort of like, who's this crowd that he's hanging out with? And then Jesus responds by giving two hypotheticals, and then he tells a really powerful story. He talks about lost sheep, which is something that'll really sell in the ancient Near East where Jesus was teaching, because there was lots of shepherds. So like, if you have 100 sheep, one goes missing, you're going to leave those 99, and you're going to go and get that one, and you're going to come back and you bring him back, and then you're going to throw a party. He says, okay. Then says, you know what, someone loses a coin. It says this woman had 10 silver coins, and those silver coins were worth about a day's wages. So say you make $100. You lose $100, you're going to turn your house upside down trying to look for $100. So it says, doesn't she light a lamp, look through the house, and then when she finds it, she celebrates. And then he tells a third story, and he says, a man has two sons. If you've been around church any length of time, you'll understand this to be the prodigal son, the story of the prodigal son. It's titled in my Bible as the story of the lost son. And Cole's Notes version, two sons, one father. Younger one says, give me my share of the inheritance, takes off, spends it all doing crazy living, ends up face down in a pile of mud in a pigsty, and then says, I gotta go home. There's nothing else for me to do. My dad's servants would be better than I'm eating right now, so I gotta go home. And then he goes home, father welcomes him with open arms, and then the older son, who was out in the field doing all that he was supposed to do, is really, really ticked off about this younger son being welcomed back. And again, this can be really good news for us, or this can be really bad news. Because I want you guys to spend some time this week reading Matthew 15. Read it a bunch of times because so many different things will hit you through that. So there's the lost sheep, the lost coin, and the lost son. So if you're one of those kids who is face down in the mud right now, this is really good news. If you're sitting in the field, it could be bad news because Jesus, the thing about the third story is nobody goes looking. So Jesus is slapping those people in the face saying, you know what, you guys aren't looking for the lost. That's why I'm here, because I'm going to find those people. I'm the one on the search, and when one of those people comes to repentance, that's when we're going to celebrate in heaven. So Jesus says, you guys aren't doing your job. I'm out here looking for the lost. Jesus' heart is always for those who don't know him. So if you're one of those people face down in the mud and maybe your life is a wreck, maybe you've never even thought about looking to God and you stumbled across this video, Jesus is looking for you. The good news is he's calling you home. He's come from heaven down to earth that you might have a way to a relationship with God. But if you're one of those people who would consider themselves too righteous to spend time with people, you need to ask yourself some questions. Does that line up with how Jesus lived? Does that line up with Jesus' teaching? You read the scriptures, you follow his life, and I just don't think you can do that. I don't think you can say, because I go to church because I'm a Christian, because I live this certain way, I can't hang out with these people. I just don't think that's biblical. So again, I'm going to challenge you to read Matthew 15 a bunch of times, really let that sink in, and pray that you would receive the heart of God. If you're one of those religious people, that you would receive a heart like Jesus had to go out and find those who are lost. And if you're face down in the mud right now, start talking to some people. Find me on Facebook, talk to some friends who you know have a real relationship with God, and say, what does it look like to start this journey home towards a loving God whose arms are thrown wide open? Ask those questions. We'll do another couple of these next week, so thanks for listening.